Steve from Real to Real Ministries, and today we have a special guest, and Apostle Paul Costa is here. He's been speaking at our church this weekend, and just to kind of give you a little history on Apostle Paul, he's a former Buffalo Bill, and I'm going to let him explain a little bit more about that. And but right now, more importantly, is that he is in healing and prophetic ministry. And Apostle Paul, thanks for taking the time.
Well, Steve, good to be with you.
If you would care to elaborate, that transition period. When did you know it was time to move forward in what God had called you? He called you to bigger and better things.
Well, I got saved in my last year of pro ball. I played 10 years, 8 with Buffalo and 2 in the World Football League. Then I had been saved about 2 or 3 years, and they put me on a speaking tour. Actually, some friends of mine that were saved and walking with God, and they had me going all over the country. Because back then, there weren't a lot of guys from the NFL, in fact very few, that were saved and walking with God, Spirit-filled. And so I was actually traveling all over the country back as a new Christian, probably a couple of years old in the Lord. And but one day, driving back from one of my speaking engagements, I had about a 4-hour trip when I got back to where I was living at the time. And I mean, the Spirit of God just filled my car and just spoke to me very, very plain and said, calling you into the ministry. And I thought, I really felt so unworthy. I argued with God for months about that.
Right.
But that's the way, basically what happened. God just called me into the ministry, and that was a little over 30 years ago.
So now you've been able to basically, am I right in saying this, tour the world and speak to different churches, go different areas, teaching on the prophetic, teaching on healings, and I know in a lot of churches that's a scary subject and they don't like to talk about it. But how crucial is it in today's Christianity?
Well, I think it's all important because one of the things that we see in the Scripture is that the wise and persuasive word, the word, the teaching or the preaching has got to be accompanied by signs, wonders, and miracles. We see that in the ministry of Jesus, every place he went. And people saw that and they said, this truly has got to be the Son of God. He speaks with authority. Look what he's doing. And I think with the end time harvest, I think it's important. We can add folks without seeing miracles, but when they see miracles, then we multiply. Because you go from being an agnostic or an atheist to, hey, this is real because of the demonstration of the power of God. I've actually done that in small groups that were basically agnostic and got up and said, how about a demonstration of the power of God? And people have not seen miracles, so it's hard if you've never seen one, never tasted one, never, all of a sudden they experience it, say, gee, that's pretty simple. Just like yesterday, the girl that came up with scoliosis and her back straightened out, that's a demonstration I love to do with something that's that vivid. As people say, gee, that's real. And it's so simple. It's not a, we put this air of, cosmic whatever on it, but it's not. It's a very simple thing.
I think that's, I'm glad you said it, and you said it like that as far as real goes. People don't understand the emphasis that we put on real to real ministries with the youth, because there's so many phony balonies out there. There's so many pastors that, they get that holier than thou attitude. So many, former professionals that got that holier than thou attitude. And, we want to show kids that people are real. You had a real life, you had a real past, and like I said, you traveled. What are some of the things that you've seen in teenagers that you would like to see changed if they're going to move forward in God?
Well, I think, I really admire what you're doing here with the youth and the way you're doing it. And you're so tech savvy, it makes a big difference because nowadays you got to be tech savvy to reach the youth. There's no question about that. One of the things I see with youth is the leader of the youth can't act like the youth.
Right.
Because if they see you acting like them, they're going to say, hey, what is that guy doing? He's being stupid. But if you act, they want a standard, they want authority in their lives, they want discipline, they want somebody to speak into their lives that offers them a challenge, not this goofy stuff. Because they have to learn to stand alone in their school. And I honestly believe I think in a lot of cases it's better for them to be in a school where they have to stand alone than for them to go to a Christian school
And be just
where where everybody has the language, they're doing the thing in front of everybody else, but when they get alone, there's somebody else, or when they're with another group, there's somebody else. So I think it's really cool that you emphasize, and really necessary, stand alone among your peers as a light to a dark world. It's an evil world. It's a dark place to be.
Right, and over this weekend, you've talked about the end times. You've talked about, look, we are in those last times, and these teenagers have to understand that they're going to stand before God one day. I'm not going to be there. You're not going to be there. It's going to be them and God.
Yeah,
that's
them
it.
alone.
And they have to answer for that.
Yeah. When I say end time, I don't mean we're going to be raptured out of here. I don't believe in that at all. I mean dominion. Right. Jesus said, go and make disciples of all nations. In Genesis, it says, multiply and increase and subdue the earth. The very first command that God gave to mankind as He created the first couple in the beginning of the church. So I stand alone, get up and do something. Really, it's not the end of time where you're going to escape. It's the end of time where we're going to take dominion.
That's right.
God is coming back for a church without spot or wrinkle.
Well, that's awesome stuff. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this interview, Apostle Paul. Thank you for taking the time in your busy schedule to talk with us here. You can find Apostle Paul at paulcostaministry.com. And feel free to browse his website and find out, maybe he's coming to a town near you. And if you're a church and you'd like to have him come speak, there's contact information there that they can get a hold of somebody from your team. And again, this has been Real to Real Ministries. Real teens, real problems, real solutions. Thanks a lot.
Good.